Hey, my name's Craig, and this is chapter 1 of my first book. I'm doing the Audible recordings with, of course, the plan to put this on Amazon, and I'm going to record it live, so you guys will get to hear all the errors that I make along the way, and that'll be edited out for the final version that'll go on Audible. So, without further ado, this book is called The Resin Chronicles. It's epic fantasy, and the first book is called Stickiness and Stones. It's part of a 3-book series that are available on Amazon right now. This first chapter is called Beginner's Guide to Magic. A cold breeze blew through Peter's open window as he lay in bed staring at the ceiling. The familiar gait of his father's footsteps struck the floorboards outside his room, and the door swung open. Oy, oy, oy. This is one of the challenges of getting set up is even the slightest little cord moving hits the mic, and you have to redo it. Chapter 1, Beginner's Guide to Magic. A cold breeze blew through Peter's open window as he lay in bed staring at the ceiling. The familiar gait of his father's footsteps struck the floorboards outside his room, and the door swung open. "Good morning. I see you're already awake," Jake said. "I couldn't sleep, not after yesterday." Jake sat on the edge of Peter's bed. "Your world is different now. This changes everything." "Everyone stared at me like I was a freak show." "Yeah, I bet. But I'd say yours was just about the best case. You're still alive and uninjured. Tell me again how it happened." "I was goofing off around the low part of the wall near the gate, the part that's not too tall, maybe 10 or 12 feet up. I lost my footing and fell, but didn't hit the ground. I just floated there." "How did it feel?" Jake asked. "Which part?" "The part where you were floating. It was like I could feel the ground with my hands, but I wasn't touching anything." "Good. Hold on to that memory. You'll need it. Let's get to it." Less than 24 hours had passed since he manifested magic, and his dad already wanted to start training. Peter's stomach tensed and his palms sweated as he followed his father. When they headed out, several merchants stopped to watch them, but Peter was accustomed to the stares, especially with his father. Side by side, they were almost indistinguishable aside from their age difference. Both were tall and slender, with dark olive skin and long, wavy black hair. After collecting their horses, they rode out of the city gates, heading down the dirt path a few miles. Along the way, neither spoke, and Peter flipped his reins back and forth to distract himself. When they arrived, early morning dew clung to the grass of an open field. Jake instructed the guards to spread out and form a perimeter. Then he took Peter to the center. "All right, son, you ready?" Jake asked. Peter nodded, but stories of accidental deaths caused by magic drifted through his mind. A bead of sweat formed across his forehead, and his face reddened as he concentrated on the melon-sized rock 20 feet away. "Close your eyes and think about reaching out and touching it. When you feel it, push on it. Just don't pull. Be patient with yourself. I'm positive you can do it," Jake said. Peter closed his eyes as instructed and wished he was anywhere else. His father's confidence was intimidating. He had never commanded magic on purpose before and was freaking out at the prospect of it. Peter forced himself to focus, and at first his fingers tingled. The sensation of a rough surface came to his fingertips. Thoughts of his head splitting open on the rock flashed through his mind. He shook it off and refocused, and the rough texture returned to his fingertips. "That's it," he thought. He tried to push on it gently, but nothing happened, so instead he tried to pull on it. Peter's eyes snapped open as he launched himself head first through the air toward the rock. "Ah!" Jake was ready and raised his hands. Peter stopped moving in midair, then floated gently back to the ground. "You pulled," Jake said. "Sorry." 2 good things came out of that. First, you did magic on purpose without injury, and second, you moved the rock. "I did? I thought I just launched myself." "You did both. Your eyes were closed, so you didn't see it move. Just before you went flying, the rock moved about an inch. Moving an object without moving yourself is difficult at first. You'll get the hang of it. Rest for a minute and try again." Peter returned to the same spot where he'd made the first attempt. This time, he kept his eyes open, raised his hands, and felt for the rock. His fingers tingled. Peter moved his hands forward and pushed, trenching the ground as the rock was buried halfway into the dirt. Gotta take a sip of water, y'all. You know, it's a funny thing when you do recordings like this because you have to stay hydrated. If your mouth is dry, you get a whole bunch of weird, funky mouth sounds. That's it. Well done, Jake said. Peter smiled broadly and one more time. Peter smiled broadly and wiped a bead of sweat off his forehead. Ready to do it again, Jake said. How many times do I have to do this? Until you're not a danger to yourself or others. That is, unless you need to be. This is going to take forever. I'm going to let that comment slide. But no whining. Can't we do this without the guards watching? No, they're here for both of us. Do you know how lucky you are? You have physical magic like me, and it manifested without killing you. Tell me again, how many stories have you heard about folks who died when they got it? A bunch. Sudden onset magic can kill. Just because you haven't seen it happen doesn't mean it didn't happen. Even after you know what you're doing, magic can kill you. Like an accidental burial. What's an accidental burial? One more time. What's an accidental burial? It happened to my friend Drexel when I was a kid. He had elemental magic. In other words, he could manipulate dirt and rock. He could burrow into a hillside or build a mountain. It was pretty incredible. One day he decided to walk through the side of the northern hills. We don't know if he fell or got knocked out, but everything caved in behind him and he was gone. I'm sorry, I didn't know. Jake waved his hand and the rock popped out of the ground, moving a few feet away. Well, I hadn't told you because I didn't want to make you afraid of magic when you were little. Do it again. After dozens of repetitions, Peter made the mock. After dozens of repetitions, Peter made the rock move in multiple directions and float a few feet in the air. Well done, Jake said. Now block. Jake tossed a pebble at Peter's face. Peter waved his hand, knocking the stone away. So Jake made a more significant rock jump towards Peter's head. And Peter... one more time. So Jake made a more significant rock jump toward Peter's head, and Peter attempted to knock it away. But instead of moving the rock, he threw himself into the air and tumbled across the meadow. Now you see why we're out here and not in town. Peter's muscles were stiff as he brushed dirt and grass off his clothes. That sucked, Dad. A little warning would have been nice. Jake reached down and pulled Peter off the ground, grinning under... Jake... Fuck. Concentrate, man. Focus. Jake reached down and pulled Peter off the ground, grinning under his steely blue eyes. Keep your guard up. Yes, sir. Peter focused as Jake magicked a barrage of stones at him. He felt their approach and brushed them aside. A guard whistled from the perimeter. We're out of time. I need to go back for a council meeting. Let's go. Jake waved back to the guards to bring their horses, and they rode toward home. You're doing well enough. Being able to bring it forward on command will take time. If you don't do magic daily, it will take more time to start up again. What do you mean? Peter asked. Let's just say you take a week off starting tomorrow. It could take another accident like your fall to restart again. That doesn't sound like fun. No, it's not. You'll have to practice on your own, and now that you have the basics, I want to teach you something else. I'm exhausted. You're young. Besides, you'll be fine. This one is fun, Jake said. You're young. You'll be fine. Besides, this one is fun, Jake said. What? Pushing magic into horses. You mean how you and Mom always beat me in a race? Don't be a sore loser. Put your hand on your horse's neck, reach out with your magic, and feel the horse's energy, Jake said. Peter put his hand on his horse. All right, I feel it. Now what? Focus on pushing your energy into the horse. Your horse will instinctively transfer the energy into motion. Try it. At first, Peter couldn't tell if it was working. Then his horse grunted, and he felt it surge. Peter glanced over at Jake, then kicked his horse into action. The horse took off galloping, almost throwing him to the ground. Peter raced down the single-lane dirt path. Jake caught up to him, and they sped together toward the city, leaving their guards far behind. Within a few minutes, they approached the 20-foot-tall circular wall wrapped around the Vasilia. The wall was constructed of tan-colored granite blocks. Each block was perfectly fit by magic, which gave the wall the appearance of being a single continuous piece. Peter and Jake slowed to a trot as they rode through the arched gate that marked the entrance to the city. He rode to the front steps of the central council building where his family made their home, jumped off his horse, and tied it to a post. The 2-story granite building consumed an entire city block. There were multiple meeting rooms and a residential wing where his bedroom was located. Peter ran up the steps to find his mother and found her preparing for a meeting. "Mom, I did it. I used magic." Veronica dropped her pen and hugged Peter. "Wow, that's so great. Congratulations. Congratulations. I'm so proud of you." "I'm going to tell Owen. Do you know where he is?" "I saw him in his room earlier. I think he was drawing again." Peter ran into Owen's room and shouted, "I did it! I used magic on purpose. I even had some control. Isn't that great?" "That's great. I'm happy for you," Owen said. "What will you do with magic now that you have it?" Owen did not look up. Instead, he was on his knees, hunched over a drawing. "I don't know yet, but Hey, are you happy for me or not?" Peter said. "I said I'm happy for you. What do you want me to say?" "Nothing, but I thought you would at least look up at me." Owen looked up at his older brother. His hands, arms, and face were covered in streaks of black charcoal. When he moved his head, Peter was able to see the drawing that had been hidden by Owen's long, wavy hair. It was a drawing of Peter with a rock levitating in front of him. Peter asked, "How did you know I made a rock levitate? Did Mom tell you?" "No, nobody told me anything. I've been in here all morning. I just felt like drawing, and this is what popped into my head." "So you see the future now?" "I just draw whatever image pops into my head." "I just draw whatever image pops into my head." "Sure." Peter went to the meeting hall where he found Veronica about to walk into the council meeting that was already in progress. She put her hand on Peter's shoulder and walked through the double doors. And they walked through the double doors together. She put her hand on Peter's shoulder, and they walked through the double doors together. Inside the meeting hall, the room was packed with 100 men and women sitting on long benches facing a small stage. An elderly man stood at the side of the stage and paused as Peter and Veronica sat in the front row next to Jake. "Please carry on," Veronica said. "Mrs. Inkle, you are up next with an update on magic," he said. "Oh," Veronica said as she took the stage. "It's been 3 years since the war with Eladin ended. We all lost so many loved ones. As you all know, of the 5 magicians we had before the war, only Jake and I survived. However, today, I'm happy to announce that we finally have a new magician. My son, Peter, has magical abilities that manifested yesterday. We remain optimistic that some of the younger children will manifest magic within a few years. We desperately need them. Jake, Peter, and I are not enough." Veronica moved off the stage and sat next to Peter. The man on the stage spoke again. "Let's move on to security. Gail, please give us an update." Jumping to the stage, Gail's long ponytail rocked against her slender frame. Within Vasilia, 1 man was mortally wounded by city guards after drunkenly attacking a shopkeeper. 4 troublemakers, who were multiple offenders, were permanently ejected for stealing. 2 more troublemakers, who were first-time offenders, volunteered for 20 hours of rehabilitation instead of ejection. Outside of our territory, the trading routes to the south have become problematic again. 2 merchants have recently gone missing. We suspect a roaming gang of bandits from Eladin is to blame. On a lighter note, a farming merchant arrived today with medicine from the Northern Territory of Eredin. We inspected the goods, and they're cleared for sale. Reinforcement of the southern wall continues. A new load of granite blocks arrived from the quarry this morning. The man on stage spoke again. "That was our last update. The next council meeting will be 1 month from today." After the meeting, Peter headed to the southern part of Vasilia to watch his father work on the wall. He strolled casually, admiring the smooth stones that lined the clean city streets. An abundance of food and craft shops lined the streets along his path. The wall surrounding Vasilia was a perfect circle with a patrol path on the top for defensive purposes. Peter waved to one of the guards atop the city wall. Within the city, Vasilia was divided into 8 concentric city blocks that surrounded a central meeting square. Every building was made of stacked gray stone covered with thatched rooftops. Peter found Jake and several guards at the southernmost section of the wall. Jake approached an area that was partially finished. Several dozen chiseled granite blocks sat atop horse carts. Each block was made of the same granite as the rest of the wall. Jake and his guard detail positioned themselves in the middle of the carts. A small crowd gathered to watch. Jake made each block float 20 feet into the air and land in an open spot. Jake made each block float 20 feet into the air and land in an open spot at the top level of the wall. When the blocks landed, they vibrated violently, grinding against the adjoining blocks to create a perfect, seamless fit. Jake was sweaty and stumbled when he finished the last block. His energy was depleted. 2 guards helped him steady. 2 guards helped to steady him as the crowd cheered and dissipated. You get to a point reading where things start to blend together. And you got to take a pause for a second. Two guards helped to steady him as the crowd cheered and dispersed. After a short while, Peter walked with Jake and the guards as they escorted Jake home to rest. When Peter arrived at the house, Owen stood in the doorway and immediately rushed to meet him. He bounced up and down with energy, then grabbed Peter's hand and pulled him away from their house. "There's a new toy maker in town. Mom said you could take me to the square to find him," Owen said. Peter didn't resist Owen and allowed himself to be tugged along for several blocks until they reached the city center. The sun had just set behind the western hills, leaving a thin veil of indigo in the sky. Vasilia's meeting square was roughly 2 times the size of the other city blocks. It was big enough to hold the entire population simultaneously. Shops around the perimeter were closing for the evening. Teams of workers moved ladders across the square, lighting oil lanterns, illuminating their faces in a dim, flickering glow. Owen and Peter looked everywhere but could not find the toy maker. Instead, they moved to the square's center and found a group of young children with their parents listening to a storyteller. The storyteller's voice rang in Peter's ears. "We're not alone in this world. The history of Vasilia is more amazing than you could ever imagine," he said. "Owen, the toy maker must have left for the night. We can come back tomorrow," Peter said. "But I want to listen to the storyteller." Peter nodded, and they sat amongst the families to listen. The storyteller waved his arms enthusiastically. "Listen, children, for this is our history, the common thread that binds us. Ages ago, there used to be millions of people. We had cities and towns that spread across the land. We had cities and towns that spread across the land for thousands of miles, but our success was too much. The dragons turned against us and laid waste to everything. Your ancestors were the last scraps of humanity who barely escaped annihilation by hiding in the Hardscrabble Hills just north of here. Years passed as they lived in squalor until one day the dragons vanished and the great desert of the north appeared. Eventually, they split into 2 groups and moved out of the hills. One group went north and built the peaceful farming territory of Eridan. The other group traveled a short distance south and made our city of Vasilia. This very spot is the middle of a patch of splendor where everything grows, the water is clean, and magic flows. Over multiple generations, some families bind with the land's magic and use it to perform amazing feats. But this place we call Vasilia is no paradise. Greed for the power of this land has caused a tragic loss of life. We live under the constant threat of violence from the brutish savages of Elladan. These 3 short years of peace won't last. It's only a matter of time until the challenge for power begins anew. A young girl stood up. "Why can't Elladan just be kind and come live with us?" she asked. A fair question indeed. Elladan is full of outcasts. They are people that Vasilia and Eridan eject because they cannot abide by the laws of a civil society. Fear not, young one. Our leaders are working to rebuild the city walls and train the next generation of magicians to help defend us. For now, it's just Elladan, Vasilia, and Eridan, the last 3 vestiges of humanity pinned against a raging, unnavigable sea to the south and the great desert to the north. It will not be this way forever. Someday we will find new lands where we can live peacefully and spread the seeds of humanity again. That is all for now. It is getting late, and I see young, tired eyes and needing rest. It is getting late, and I see young, tired eyes needing rest. Good evening, he said as he walked away. A hulking, wide-framed man approached Peter and Owen. His skin was dark tan, and he had long, wavy hair tied in a ponytail. Blah, 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 blah. A hulking, wide-framed man approached Peter and Owen. His skin was dark tan, and he had long, wavy hair tied in a ponytail. Mr. Peter, good to see you, he said. Wayne! Owen hugged the man around his torso. Can I ride on your shoulders? Owen asked. Yes, of course, Wayne said as he picked up Owen, put him on his shoulders, and walked out of the square. Owen loved the ride, looking over Wayne's head from 7 feet up, and tapped Wayne's shoulder. Are you and Gail really twins? Yes, we are. But you don't look anything alike. We have the same mother, and we were born on the same day, so that makes us twins whether we look alike or not, Wayne said. Owen shrugged. I still don't get it. How does that happen? Peter was locked in thought about the storyteller's tale. Wayne, do you believe in dragons? Of course he does. It's all true, Owen said. Well, Mom and Dad don't believe it. They said the stories about dragons are just a myth, and nobody really knows how we got here. Wayne tapped Owen's leg and softly spoke. All I know about dragons is that I hope I never meet one. Wait, stop. Put me down. Wait, stop. Put me down. Owen ran back to the center of the square and stared at the stone paver. Can you hear it? Hear what? Peter said. I don't hear anything, Mr. Owen. Come on, it's time for you to go home, Wayne said. He scooped Owen off the ground, put him back on his shoulders, and started walking out of the square again. There was something there. An image of a white cloud underground popped into my head, and it made a noise. It was so loud when I stood in the middle of the square. It sounded like someone underground was humming, like the cloud was humming. I think you need sleep, Wayne said. They walked the rest of the way home in silence. Wayne delivered Peter and Owen to their doorstep, and after a quick meal, the brothers went to bed. That's the end of the chapter.